Welcome to Minds on a Mission podcast, the podcast where we explore the journeys that challenge us, change us, and chart the best course for our best selves. You can find us on pretty much any streaming platform that you would like to watch. I'm trying to shorten that down for you guys, so we're trying. So I'm your host, Samantha Bailey, a content creator and an entrepreneur, and today's lovely guest is Li Rivera.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I'm sorry we're already not off to a good start. I worked all day, so my brain's like.
It's totally cool. I mean, that's what entrepreneur life is. Things happen. Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
and then like with my job, because I'm kind of like a virtual teller. It's always like the beginning of the day, and towards the end of the day, I swear my brain's like just shutting off, and I will say something, and I'm like, wait, no, I didn't need to bring that part up, and I always tell them, I'm like, I'm sorry, it's the end of the day, my brain's not working anymore.
It's okay. I'm pretty sure that people love to see that part of you because you're just like everybody else. So it's totally cool.
I know my issue is I'm a perfectionist, and I'm always like, oh, you messed up that intro,
Mm.
but I'd rather be
Yeah.
real with you guys and let you guys know I'm like, listen, I'm a little slow right now. I'm sorry. We're warming up.
Okay. I can completely relate to that because I beat myself up over the little things too. Yeah. And it's like,
Yeah,
and it's ridiculous, but then you strive for that anyway. It makes no sense.
exactly. I'm always just like, oh, you do this intro every time. Why do you mess it up? But I'm like, it's also too, I'm like, I acknowledge I'm trying to tweak things because with the intro, I always say like, you can find us, and I list out all of them, and there's so many. So I'm trying to find like a way to kind of shorten that up for everyone so that it's not like so long, but
Yeah.
it's a work in progress. So
Yeah. I
I
hear you. Yeah, you know what? I just went through a little change on my podcast because I was told I publish it on YouTube, and they were like, it's recommended you have it like the intro to be like 10 seconds or less. And I was like, holy cow, 10 seconds or less. Because mine was a little longer too. And I was like, oh, and then I get overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, let me try this. But it's just if people who are really interested in the topic, they're gonna listen regardless.
right. And it's like too, it's like I almost like liked listing each one out because everyone has a preference, so it's kind of good to know. But it is on so many, so I'm just like, I don't need to be like it's on this one and this one and this one.
Hmm.
So I'm like trying to figure that way. I'm like how to, because too, I think with that shortening that up, it would be almost 10 seconds because I think that like I have it pretty smooth. It's like I bring it in, have that short explanation, then it's just the long part of saying what it's on. But
Hmm.
then introducing myself and the guest is always those are all the short parts. It's just we're on this, this, and this, and I'm like, I feel like I'm just babbling on about where you can find.
Yeah, I hear it. So what I did is I pre-recorded that part, so I don't have to repeat it every time, and it makes it easier. So usually I just now dive right into the conversation with the person. I think you just learn as you go, and whatever works for you. Because some people they do it all, one straight shot, and I admire that because I can't do that. I have to take breaks.
Right. I always like sometimes too. I always feel bad because it may seem like I'm like sighing at the episode, but I'm like taking a breath of air before I say it. So I'm like, because I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, it takes a second to get that out. But
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, but I like your idea with like kind of pre-recording. I wonder too, with yours, is it just of like you have it introducing the podcast and stuff, but then after when that intro is done playing, then you introduce yourself and the guest, or wasn't sure how you.
So when the published version has a clip at the beginning of the conversation, maybe like clickbait, and then I go into the short uh, intro, and then the actual interview begins, and then I have a closing statement. So at the very end, asking people to like rate, review, share. So that's how I did it. But initially, it was just like you. It was live, and it all started through a challenge because I was so petrified of being online. I felt like very intimidated by it, and so a friend said, "Let's do a 3-day challenge, like interview 3 different people." And I was like, oh, okay. So I did it. And I was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. And she's like, okay, now do another one for 5 days. And then I did it for 5 days. And then the next one was a 10-day challenge. And then I just kind of didn't stop for a long, long time. So it all started on YouTube. And then people kept telling me just like move that content onto podcast. And I was hesitating. I overthought it all. I thought it was going to be this huge ordeal. Oh my gosh, it was so simple. And I was overthinking the intro, and I was like, oh, and I need a background song and I need this. And I'm like, no, it's like you just start simple, very basic. And I actually have kept it pretty basic. Like some people do B-roll in their videos, when they edit it. I like it. I hate doing the B-roll. I hate editing. I just like the conversations. So I got a VA, and she keeps it pretty simple. And I love her. She's amazing. Joy. Joy is amazing and very patient. She does my show notes for me and all. And I fund it all myself. I keep it pretty low budget. And some people might be like, oh, but that's not smart because you're just, not making money off of it. And I think like eventually I will. It's just right now I'm having fun with it. And I think that's the most important part, to bring in people who you like having these conversations with, who add value to your community. And then eventually you just start adding one little thing here, one little thing there. And that's probably what I'll do this coming year, since I have a lot of changes in my life right now. Like I'll be moving out of state. I'm going through a divorce. One of my kids who turned 18 already moved out of the house. So now I'm down to like one child with me. So it's like, it's all different. So as that's changing, I know that I'm also going to have kind of like more time to do all these other extra things. And I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's good. And I feel like too, it's like exactly what you said. It's just kind of like for me too, it's like I felt like I just kind of had to get used to it. And obviously like my issue is it's a good and a bad thing, because I'm like I always have to be trying to figure out, oh, what can I fix next? But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes like you just need to like slow down and enjoy it. Like, and for me, I relate with like here's the thing. I like editing, but I don't.
I know. Yeah, I
Like
get
the
it.
creative process,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like how long it takes to edit one video, and then let alone I do 2 episodes a week. So I would have to edit 2 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm a perfectionist, so it would just take me forever. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of where I like being live, because it kind of forces me to get out of that. I'm like, I can't clip or nothing what I think, should be in it, what I should have said, or you cutting out ums and stuff. I'm like, it kind of forces me to like allow myself to be raw and not be so like in control over every little thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you have more fun when you just let it flow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, I think this is my 17th episode.
Oh, congratulations.
16th or 17th,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy. I can't believe I've done that many already.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's cool too to connect with people that also have podcasts or have had podcasts, because it's kind of like you're like, oh, well, you also know what it's like to, have to start in, like manage it and kind of the process behind that. But like, it's not a bad thing, because it's like you realize, like, wow, I can do anything. If I can
Mm-hmm.
start from scratch, like, I could do whatever I want. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I felt, because I was scared to start one. I just was like, what if no one wants to watch it? What if no one wants to come on it? Like, all those limiting beliefs.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that you might not have all the views as soon as it airs, but then as time goes on, your older ones get more views because people just start finding it, and I think the key is consistency.
Right.
Um, and so like I have some episodes that are, I think, 5 years old, and they have a ton. I mean, they have so many views, and I just found that out because normally I don't look at my analytics. That's how like nonchalant about it I am with it. And that's why I know like next year I'm gonna, okay, now I'm starting to pay attention to the analytics. Next year I'll be probably using that information to, step it up a notch. We'll see what happens.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, it's always of like, which parts are engaging. Like, so when I kind of like to keep an eye on, because like luckily with this, because it streams to 3 platforms and then I upload on everything else, I can kind of I can see the viewers. So I notice a lot of times, and this was the whole reason I started the podcast in the first place. So it just makes me feel like very in alignment with like what I'm doing. Like I know I'm doing something great, but it's usually always the parts where we're talking about tips for beginners. A lot of people want to know, and that's in a range of things, mindset or how to start in a specific field, because everyone that I have on is in different fields. So that's kind of where I like to watch, the viewer and be like, okay, so I noticed this is what people really like, um, which makes me feel great because I don't have a specific field yet that I'm like really in. I'm still figuring it out, which to me, I'm like, I'm only 21, so I got time, but it's still
Yes.
stressing. But it's good to know that, like, from what I've learned already, I can help other beginners because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not like at that starting point. I've been in my journey for about maybe 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that you do have a hard time with that because I think a lot of youth do that. I know I certainly did. And the only reason why I turned out less stressed out about it is because I joined the military. So when you join the military right after high school, you don't really have to worry too much about what am I going to do. I did worry about like what I was going to study in college. And I convinced my mom to let me enlist before the age of 18. So she had to sign off, and my promise was like, I'll make you proud. I'll go to college. And then I get to the military and I'm like, oh crap, now I have to deliver, And I was like, I don't even know what I want to do because my problem was not that I didn't know what I wanted to do. My problem is that I wanted to do too many things and I didn't know what to get started with. And then on top of that, my job in the military was completely different than anything I wanted to do. I was actually a mechanic in the army. I worked on all the tanks and all the heavy wheel vehicles and stuff like that. And I wanted to do that just to kind of like go against the grain because people expected me as a woman to do something like an admin or nursing or, something like that. And I was like, no, I want to do something so different so that when I'm really old, I can tell my kids what a baddie I was and whatever. And I'm sorry, I don't know if I can curse, but usually I say the other word. but so and through that journey, like it just unfolds. That's something I've been telling the 18-year-old right now because she's kind of in that situation where she knows what she wants to do, but she doesn't. I think she's kind of overwhelmed. And I'm like, it's gonna work out. I tell that to everybody, it's gonna work out. You don't think it will, and if you just keep dabbling into different things, it'll come to you. And I think that's part of the problem that sometimes we're too scared to explore because you think you might mess up or whatever. And you probably will. And that's a good thing because then you know what not to do. And then you know to reroute yourself a different direction. And your calling, your purpose, whatever you want to call it, it'll present itself. You just cannot stay stagnant. You cannot just not do anything. Um, and when you don't do anything, that's when a lot of mental health issues come up, like depression, anxiety, a sense of worthlessness, all of that. So just stay busy, explore, and when you explore, you have just such a richer life. And I wish when I was younger, I would have explored more while I was in high school. The reason I joined the military was because I'm the oldest of 6 kids. My mom became single when I was 14 and didn't have my father's help, and he wasn't in the picture, which was a really good thing. And so I was just like, I'm the eldest kid. She had high expectations. She's like, you better graduate because, that pressure was put on me. Like, you're the first one, so you got to be the example. And then, like it's your responsibility to do really well in life because your siblings are looking up at you. I was like, okay, all right. And then I had my own issues growing up. I came to the US at the age of 7 from Nicaragua. So I didn't know any English. I discovered racism and bullying, and it really impacted me in a very negative way for many years. So it's kind of like a miracle that I ended up in the military, because the military is not a place where you get cuddled. It's not a place where you're not going to get yelled at or anything like that. So it all turned out just really wonderful. And I'm not going to say it was easy, because it was not. I think the military definitely makes you grow, it forces you to grow. And with me, it forced me to learn to advocate for myself for the first time. And then somehow after the military, I ended up enlisting for 3 years, thinking I was just going to do 3 years, get the GI Bill and benefits and all, and then just move on. But I ended up being in the military 10 years. And I ended up getting out because I got pregnant. I had my first child, and it was really tough, very misogynistic, unfortunately. And I decided, I think I'm going to get out. And then I got pregnant with my second child. And by then it was just like very clear. I was like, yeah, I'm going to get out. I'm going to miss out on a lot of my kids' lives if I stay in. And I did get out. I don't regret it. I think it was the best decision I could have done for me and my family. And then from there, it was just like, it was hard, because I went from being a leader in the military to suddenly being just this new mom. And then my husband at the time, he was having a lot of health issues, and the market was crashing. And in my mind, I thought, I'm just going to get a job. It's going to be fine. I've done 10 years in the military. I'm high ranking. I've done some cool stuff. I have a lot of experience. But then I think, like a lot of us in the military, live in a bubble where we know what's going on in the world, but we don't really know what's going on in the world. Like, it doesn't impact you, because in the military, you have a secure paycheck, you have health benefits, you have housing, you have food, you have it all. I'm not saying you live lavishly, because you certainly don't. It's not super great pay, but you live well for the most part. And so I got out, and it all came crashing down. I found myself in foreclosure. I found myself taking care of my husband and these two new babies, and couldn't get a job. So it was like a whirlwind of a lot. And then, I somehow overcame that. My oldest, started kindergarten, or elementary school, and she got bullied. And I was like, what the heck's going on? I thought I got bullied because I was me. I was an immigrant kid. I was too different. I was like, why is this happening to my child? She's only 5. And it didn't really hit me that it can happen that early. And I kept trying to get some help from the school and stuff. And there wasn't, the help was not coming. And everything I kept hearing was, well, we have to follow policy. We have to follow these steps. And I was like, you know what? The whole school year was almost about to end. Nothing was happening. And I was like, let me look at these policies. At the time, I had decided to go to get my master's. And my concentration was social policy and leadership. So since this is like a social policy, I was like, let me read it. Let me see what this is. What is it saying? Why is it preventing children from being given the aid that they need? And that's when I just started discovering all this bureaucracy, the lack of information that parents have, the lack of information on how to advocate for your children. And then I was able to use that to my advantage, finally. And my child was finally, like, kept safe from the kids that were bullying her and other kids. But it took a lot of research, and then I started sharing that information. And then years later, I created a Diversity and Anti-Bullying Academy. And that's what I've been doing since. That's just, working with organizations, providing workshops, educating parents mainly. The kids, not so much. I like to work with the parents, because they're the ones that go to the organizations and they advocate for their kids. But anyway, I've been on a rant, so I'm going to stop right there if you have any questions.
So I feel like I have a lot of thoughts, but I think, sorry, my brain, I always say I got squirrel brain, so
I know, it's okay. And I said a lot. I said so much.
Oh, good. One thing I've really noticed, and especially with talking with you and listening to your story, is that almost all cases I've heard with everyone I've spoke with, it always comes full circle. It's always something of a pain point when you were younger that always ends up being in that final alignment part where you really feel like, wow, I could really do this for the rest of my life. Like, I really feel like I'm impacting others. And I kind of feel similar because although I'm like, oh, I still don't know exactly how I'm gonna get to where I want to be, one of the biggest things like that I really am interested in want to be a part of my life is real estate investing.
Mhm.
And when I look at it and thinking of, well, what would be my first circle? Um, my full circle would be for a while I struggled with being homeless when my mom and my brother lived in California. And so thinking about being able to provide homes for others, knowing that I had that pain point a while where I didn't have my own, it's like kind of a thing where I feel like I know I'm in the right path. Like I know I'm headed there. It's just still in that of like, how do I get there? How do I start? What do I do? What is going to get me from there to there? That's where I'm still kind of like. But another thought I had was if someone was in your position where they're 18 and they're thinking about going into the military, what is one piece of advice you would give to that person?
Ask a lot of questions. And I know that that can be really hard because sometimes you don't know what you should know to ask. Um, but when you start asking a lot of questions, you get answers, and then those answers prompt more questions. And like what I thought I had asked a lot of questions, and I now looking back, I didn't because um, I think I was just not encouraged. I was the type of household I came from taught me to always keep quiet, so there was domestic violence in my home, and I noticed what happened when you open your mouth. Sometimes it was really bad. So I think that was already like inculcated in me, like that fear. And then I also saw people as figures of authority. And that's the other thing, where in the military, yeah, you have a lot of figures of authority, but that doesn't mean that you should let them lead the conversation. Do ask questions. They're not going to kill you. They're not going to beat you up, you know,
Yeah.
and challenge them. That's something that it's also taught to a lot of youth. Don't challenge the adults. Don't challenge authority. No, do challenge them. You just have to do it in a very tactical and respectful way. I remember asking, I said, I want to be a mechanic because I thought it was really cool for a girl to work on tanks and stuff. And I was like, do I get to drive them? And they were like, yeah, you get to drive them. I was like, yes, I'm going to do that. I was like, okay, but once I'm done with that, like, can I change my job? Can I do something else? I actually want to be a linguist because I've had a fascination with languages. And he said, yeah, of course you can. You just fill out a paperwork, and then you just, submit it and you can change your job. It's a lie. It's not that easy. You actually have to meet so many requirements and your command has to approve it if they feel like it. And also the Department of Defense has to have a slot available for you. So um, those questions that would have led to those answers is what I didn't ask. And so I would say, like, go with somebody who has already been in the military, or somebody who is not a recruiter, who does the job, because you can actually ask them if you want to be an aviation mechanic. Ask them to introduce you to somebody who's actually doing the job, either in the reserve, the guard, or active duty, and have a conversation. You can actually set up like a whole day where you can shadow them just to see what it's like. But any job that exists in the civilian sector exists in the military. I'm telling you, like, when I found out that there's a cartoonist, people are in the military who get paid to serve just for being a cartoonist, illustrators, marketing specialists, PR specialists, firefighters, nurses, of course, um, band, like the army band, the Navy band, all the bands. You're a musician. That's actually a job, an official job. So like I did not know how many other opportunities there were. I thought it was so limited because you think of the military, you think combat, infantry, jumping out of planes, firing at somebody, or like mechanics or fixing other things, pilots. But nah, it's got it, it's a whole another world of opportunities. So yeah, ask questions, lots of them.
I really appreciate you sharing all of that because, I mean, I've never been in the military, and I don't really know many people in my personal life that have been in it. So, I'm not me in specific interested, but I just thought if there's anyone out there who's hearing your story and thought, wow, this is really something I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought that would be a great way to kind of give some insights for people so that if that is something that they want to do, they know how to kind of navigate through that. So I really appreciate you giving your insight on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. I always love to answer other questions because there's so much that we don't know. So much and there's also so many misconceptions. Like somebody just the other day told me like, well, you got your house because the VA gave it to you. I'm like, no, the VA does not. Military veterans and active duty people, just any military person does not just get money for their home. They hear about the VA, the home benefits. Really what the VA is they're your cosigner. You still have to come up with your down payment. You still have to have a job. You still have to have good credit. Sometimes they have good programs where like the down payment can be like $1. My first home, actually, I bought it like that in Texas. This was many years ago. I was 23, and they had a program where the earnest money it was like $500, and then $1 was the down payment. But then they charge you that in the loan. Of course, they just make it easier for you to like buy the house and acquire that mortgage. So yeah, there are all these type of misconceptions. Does it help? Yeah, absolutely. But you still have to pay everything in the end. It's not just like, here, you can have this for free.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had another thought, but before I touch on that, you're speaking about misconceptions. What do you think the number one misconception is about being in the military?
That's a good question because there's so many. Let me think. Um, that everybody gets to go to war. I served during 9/11. And like I said, I was in the military 10 years from 1997 to 2007. So 9/11 was in 2001. I never deployed, never. I helped thousands of soldiers deploy. So it all depends because, they're always going to need somebody in the rear to help get the rest out to war. They're always going to need people to do a different type of job. So I think like that's what scares people. Um, and just because you serve in the military, you don't always get to see war. Now there are some people that do deploy many times, but it really depends on the job, and that's why you should ask questions like who gets to go to the front lines, or like which units, and under what conditions, because um, everybody's afraid of that. Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's a really good thing to point out. In any case, no matter what you want to do, it's like always ask questions, always try to get that full picture. I feel like for me, one of the things that I had been interested in getting into my journey of like being in business and trying to figure out like what I'm gonna do. Um, Me and my friend, well, business partner, but we were friends before business partners, but we had common interests with real estate, and you know, we really wanted to start on a venture together, and I mean, when I say we were young, it probably sounds crazy because you're probably thinking, "You're only 21. What do you mean we were young? You're still young." But to me, I'm like, from what I've learned within the last year or so since making this decision, which I will say, I feel like I've learned so much since then. It's like crazy. Like, I don't feel like I'm the same person. And so to me, it almost feels like when we were young moment, because I'm just like I feel like I've gained so much knowledge since then that if I were to make that same decision now, I would not have done it. I would have not have done it. I've learned so much since then. But it was for Airbnb arbitrage, and it was a company, I won't name them, but because I have to pay a business loan for that, but I'll get to that. But we didn't know what to look at. We didn't know, oh, this is what high interest is. This is, like when you're paying it, like the loan we have, it's it's higher interest than it is principal. So there's still so much left on the loan because most of it's going to that interest,
Mhm.
not. And we just didn't understand that. We just was like, oh, this is something that could be big. We didn't know there were so many things that come along with it. Opening an LLC, paying for taxes. They want you to also get a financial advisor, so you have to pay for all these things. And it's kind of something where you kind of just look over that. You're like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't even know what that means. I just know that I really want to do this. I really feel like it could be a good opportunity. And so over a year later now, stuck with the loan, the business never worked out. And it's just kind of a thing that like I'm like, well, I learned that lesson. I
Mhm.
learned this is what you look at. Um and it again is the thing of being young, not knowing what to ask, not knowing what to look for, not asking enough questions, just exactly like you said. So it's like all of those things that kind of, and it's like it happens for a reason. I know there's a reason why it happened. And it taught me to look for those things, which is why I'm like now I would never do that again. Without being like, okay, this is all the things. But with anything, if you're not sure, if you don't know what questions asked, if you don't feel like maybe it's a good decision, even though it's like it sounds exciting, wait, take the time. There will be another moment to do that, but always make sure that you are figuring out, okay, what answers do I need to have resolved? What do I need to look at? Um, and just kind of taking it from there. So that's kind of my input on that.
Yeah, you make a really good point that, you're going to learn through your processes. You didn't know all of this stuff, and now you have grown. And sometimes that growth comes with those rough learning lessons. Um, One thing I would say to youth is always have a mentor. Sometimes mentors come in the form of just somebody who's just happens to always be there and guide you. So they're not going to walk up to you and say, "Hey, I'm going to be your mentor." Nah, it's just that one person that always tends to share some words of wisdom with you. And then if you want to have like a more official mentor relationship with someone, score.org is an organization that helps people. It's a lot of executives that volunteer their time, and all they want is for you, if you're going to commit to asking them to be your mentor, because they assign you based on your zip code and based on the industry that you want to get mentorship for, right? So all they want is that if you're going to commit to them, that you're going to execute, because they don't want to waste their voice and time in giving you the guidance for you to just not execute anything at all. And this is just people who are successful and who have had failures and have learned, and they just want to share the information with others. Score.org is like a sub entity within the Small Business Administration. So it's partially funded by federal and state funds. But the mentors, they volunteer their time. They're not being paid. So you go to score.org, you submit your inquiry, your request. And I remember that's one of the first things that I did when I started my business, my first business, it was these custom kitchen chopping blocks. Um, and so I remember getting a mentor who was in the manufacturing industry, and I got another one who knew everything about patents and stuff, because I had these like unique designs and I had no idea how to get started. Years later, I got a mentor who she was with a big newspaper. I want to say it was New York Times or Wall Street Journal. I can't remember. And she had been an anchor for one of the big networks for many years. So she had a lot of experience, and I wanted her to guide me with writing a book. And I also got another mentor years later who knew about marketing. So I wanted to do, because that was all new to me. So there are opportunities, and then there's also like small business development centers who come, like these centers, they bring in experts and people from banks, and they explain about loans and things like that. So you can even get a mentor for your PhD, for your dissertation. It is crazy the amount of resources that are available to youth and anybody nowadays online, or like you can even go into your university, and universities have a department of development and economics, something I can't remember the title, but that department actually helps the community with their small with helping the small businesses, or to help create a business, with entrepreneurship. There's a lot out there, and all of this I just learned just asking questions and also listening to other people. Listening is so valuable. And I remember my mom used to tell me when I was little, she was like, Dali, just listen to old people. They've been through some stuff. And if you listen to them, you will save yourself so many hardships. And I never forgot that. And so I've been doing that. And I think that was partly the reason why I also like moved up the ranks in the military so quickly, because I listened to the elders, the experienced people. And they would tell me what to do and I would do it. And next thing you know, I was getting promoted. So there's so much value in just listening and executing. If you really want to try something out to succeed, you just got to try, and you have to let go of fear. And I tell myself that all the time, because I'm still afraid of fear. But I'm still afraid of failure. But I have failed many times over, and it sucks and it still hurts. And then I beat myself up over it. But then I get up and I go and do it again, just a little bit differently, to see what's gonna work. And I think that's just the cycle of life. You just got to keep trying.
Right. I feel like so I recently, for a while, sorry, I'm gonna go, I like get sucked into it. I'm like, this is what I'm thinking. Um, so preface, I just was gonna kind of explain a little bit of my story with getting into therapy and coaching and stuff, if
Mm-hmm.
that's all right. But there's a reason I bring it up. Anyway, sorry.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, for me, I feel like I've had a lot of stuff in my life that I felt like I kind of was unresolved, and I didn't know how exactly to get into that. And I always had that like limiting belief of like therapy is too expensive. I can't get therapy. Um and finally like I started looking into it, and I was on my mom's insurance, and I was like, I don't know what is covered or what, but like I really need therapy. I really need someone to talk to, because I feel like I have a lot of things that, yes, I feel like I've talked about, but it's kind of different when you talk with family or friends, because they're biased. They're gonna tell you, kind of what they think that. I mean, and it's not always of like, oh, I just want to tell you what I think you want to hear, but it's always been a thing in the back of my head of like, are you just saying this because you're my family and you're trying to comfort me, or is this like genuinely your opinion on it? Because I'm definitely someone where I acknowledge that I in any situation, me and another person, I play a role in whatever happened. It's not just that person, and it's not just me. We both play a role in it. And so I've always been a person of like, I want to know what I could have done better. I understand that maybe it may have seemed like not entirely my fault, or more so that person's fault. But I'm like, I don't want to hear that part. I want to know what could I have done better. Um, so that was kind of something that sparked for me of like, I really need a non-biased person to just talk about things and kind of tell me like, okay, from an outside point of view, what do you see when you're looking at this? Um, so I was able to it was like 8 free therapy sessions with our insurance that we're on. So I had those sessions, but then obviously that ran out, so then it started charging, and I just was like, I can't simply afford the rates that they want to charge. So I hadn't been therapy in a while, and then recently I kind of reached out on Facebook and was like, I really need to get back into therapy or something. Like, I need that extra guidance, like someone to just kind of be there because I have very like high and low periods where I
Hmm.
feel really good and then I get in my head and I self-sabotage and then I'm like falling back down. And that's kind of where I was thinking of like, still having that fear of failure. Like I have that as well where I'm just like I know truly too, it's like people say, well, the only way to fail is to stop. So I do agree. But I have a lot of expectations for myself. So I always think if I don't get there, then I failed. So I started doing coaching recently because I had a couple people comment on that post, um, offering to give free coaching and I've started with one and yeah, I really like it and I really appreciate you mentioning the score.org. I immediately went onto my phone and was like looking it up when you said it because I'm definitely looking for more than one person. I think you should always have more than one mentor, other point of views. You can kind of see things differently. Maybe one coach will say this, and then you kind of feel like there's a missing part of it, and another will tell you another part, and it just kind of feels like you're like, okay, I got the full picture now. So I'm definitely gonna look into that because I just started coaching again, and I already feel like really feel comforted. It's just nice to talk to someone and they kind of, be like, okay, well, here's what I think of it, and here's something that you could work on.
Hmm. I'm glad that you mentioned coaching because that is definitely an option that I think is new to today's world, whereas before it was mainly counseling, like
Right.
and in regards to counseling, I must say, I'm glad that you got the 8 free sessions. A lot of people don't realize that they can call their insurance providers and ask for that. And I know that now, if you do telehealth, sometimes it's free, and a lot of people don't know that. And then the other thing that people don't know is that there's a sliding scale based on your income. So, like, if a therapist charges 200 an hour or 150, depending on your income, they might slide it down to $25 per session, or whatever. It can range anywhere in between there. So I know that there are people out there that really, really want that type of help. But the other type is also coaching, or like life coaching, business coaching. And what I would say to people is, yeah, give it a try, but also just make sure that you align with that person, because everybody has a different method. And nowadays, you also do have a lot of people that say, oh, I'm a coach, but they don't really have credentials. Not that that's always necessary, because there are some great coaches out there that never went to get that certification, but they have some type of background that makes them phenomenal with that skill, right? But I think that getting that type of help is one of the biggest forms of self love and self care. And I think we need it nowadays because there's so much going on in the world aside from our own personal things. There's just a lot. And so I think everybody needs somebody that they could be talking to. And I also see mental health as not a thing that you do when stuff goes wrong. It's more of a maintenance thing, a maintenance for your brain. Just like you do every 6 months with a dentist and you go and get that, cleaning, or like your yearly physical. That's what mental health is. You don't have to wait until something goes wrong to go and speak to somebody.
Right. And I feel like too that's how I felt because and that's also depending because I feel like there's things that like for me, I felt like there are things that I kind of just put like on the back burner, just was like these are things that are like traumatic events in my life that like would tell myself, I've healed from it. I'm fine. And then when you get into that and you get to talking and then you realize I really haven't. There's so much on it that I haven't unpacked. And so it's nice too because it's like you almost kind of realize like, oh, I feel like I'm kind of limiting in this area. Then you talk you with the coach or whatever, counselor, and then they ask you questions, kind of prompt you, and then they're taking a look at, okay, that's farther behind that. Like that's right now. What has happened in your life? And you go to see, oh, something from years ago is why I'm still having struggles in this specific area. It's because I haven't actually taken the time to unpack that and really figure out what it is that is leading me to that, because I'm repeating patterns unintentionally. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. And sometimes we also self guard because of whatever happened in the past. Like I know I had an aha moment a long, long time ago, because I was so like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm on my own. I cannot depend on anybody but myself. So then it was really hard for me to receive help. And it still is to a certain point. But that's part of like the mentality of, no, stop relying on on anybody, because they can drop you like this at any moment. Everybody else has in the past, so rely on yourself, you know. And then you don't realize that until you either are talking to somebody in therapy or coaching, you know, a coach, or it comes up in your relationships with friends or with your partner. And that's, yeah, that's an eye opener when it happens that way. That's how it happened to me, where I was like, oh my gosh, I did not realize that I was doing that, as it's as a mode of self-protection. And also because unconsciously, I am not even going to say subconsciously, but it was unconscious, like so deeply in there that I didn't realize, you know, that I have certain beliefs because of my past. So yeah, I would say kudos to you, because um, when you decide to go there, you are committing to deal with that hard stuff. And it can be very, very hard. But somebody said this a long time ago, I never forgot it, and said, when you talk about something painful and you, it's just a conversation, it's a sign of healing. But if you're still talking about it and you can't get past it without crying, then you still have healing to do. And the other one I heard that I love is, um, when you talk about the scar instead of the wound, you know that you're healed. I was like, oh, wow, that's deep. That's so true.
That one was good. I feel like it's almost like a thing when you start on your journey of on your mindset. It's almost like these floodgates open, and it's like all these things that like you didn't realize were a thing are a thing now, and you're like, and it can be overwhelming because it's like for me, I'm like, I write a list and I'm like, oh, this is what I want to work on, and I'm just like, if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have been like, oh, nothing. I'm fine. Like I'm great where I am.
Hmm.
But then looking where I am now, how much I've done to change, and still, I mean, life is an ongoing cycle of change and growing. And so that's something that like I realized like, okay, even though I feel like I've done so much, there's always going to be work to do. And but it's a thing of feeling like at least I'm recognizing it. Like that is the
Hmm.
number one thing to me, being self-aware and realizing, okay, this may take a while to get some of these things done. And then at that point, there's gonna be more things that I'm gonna realize, and it's gonna be an ongoing thing. But realizing that all that matters is that I'm aware and that I'm taking the steps towards these things and
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. And being self aware is really, really hard. I remember feeling this emotional, like this uncomfortableness within me when I was talking about a certain topic. And I was like, oh, I hate it. I hate it. I don't want to talk about it. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I hate it. And it feels very uncomfortable because I don't want to admit this, or I don't want to face it. And part of self growth is having to face those things, even the things that you might not like so much about yourself. Maybe it was like how you reacted to a certain situation or how you treated somebody. Because, we're not perfect. We have hurt others too. We have been the villains in somebody's story, just like we have villains in our own stories, like, right? So that's just hard for some people to admit, and to just be self aware of, like, if somebody tells you, oh, like your demeanor, you come off too strong, um, or you're just weak when it comes to this, and you need to stand up for yourself, and you're like, no, I'm not, and you get defensive and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I getting defensive? What's there? And then you start digging in, and you're like, ooh, so that is what self awareness looks like, and it can be uncomfortable, but in the end, I think it makes you just a whole different person and a better person. And you should not feel ashamed about it either, because I think everybody goes through it, and nobody is perfect. Nobody's an angel. Nobody's like, uh, we've all done something that we don't like, not just others, but ourselves. We don't like, I can tell you so many stories of like decisions or like reactions I had to certain situations. And I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, I can't believe I reacted that way.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like too, something that's been great for me is one thing I love to do is like listen to motivational videos like while I'm at work because I'm allowed to have headphones in, and um I like to watch like Mel Robbins, and then there's this other girl, I forget her name, but it was something I heard recently, and it really made me think of like that is so true. But basically, we're talking about like when you love someone so much, like say your mom, right? You're not afraid to be honest with them because you know it's because you care. And so it's so easy to be like, Mom, this is what I think. This is, I'm saying this because I love you. I don't want to hurt you, but this is what I think. But then when it comes to ourselves, it is so hard for us to have that same loving compassion to be honest with ourselves. And it's something that's really made me think of like, yeah, there's so many times where I felt that kind of like what you're saying, where I knew there was something, underlying, or I was insecure about something. There's a reason why I was reacting a certain way, but because I didn't have that self-worth and that self-love, it was so hard for me to give, and I still struggle with this, giving myself compliments and telling myself, it's okay, and being taking that time to really be like, this is really an issue. Like, as much as you want to ignore it, it is an issue. It is something that you need to work on. And it's just like hard to kind of get to that point where you can do that consistently. It's like you got to take it in steps, but it always makes me weird, like thinking about it, like, how's it so easy for me to say this to my mom and be like, Mom, you need to work on this. Like, I'm saying because I love you. But then when it comes to yourself, and I know a lot of people deal with this, it's like, I'm just like, no, it's fine. Like, and then I'm like, no, it's not fine. Like, you have to give yourself that same love and tell yourself, no, I'm accepting that this has been something and this, and that I need to work on it. And I'm giving myself grace, but I'm not allowing myself to just forget about it and just say, oh, it's whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely takes, you have to admit that you're going to be a work in progress until you die, pretty much. We're constantly changing. What you
Right.
liked 5 years ago, you probably don't care about anymore. And what you care about right now, you probably won't care about in 5 years, because you're going to be at a different stage in life with new challenges, new people in your life, most likely, and you become almost like a whole new person, and that's okay. And I think that too is something that we need to acknowledge and accept, because I hear a lot of people say, I don't know, you've just changed. I'm like, well, yeah, you have too. It's called evolution. That's what we do. And the true friends, the true partners, need to understand that that is what is going to happen, and you need to be okay with it, just like I need to be okay with other people changing around me. And one of the things that has happened with my children is that they've already experienced like friendship floating, when you just drift apart. And they were like, oh my God, what happened? And they felt bad. You're like, I wonder if I did anything. I'm like, no, you did nothing. You just drifted. You're now different people. They're now turning 18. They're thinking about college. They're thinking about jobs. Some of them, it requires them to move out of state or out of the city. So everybody has their different paths, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the reality is, you're not going to be able to remain friends and hang out, maybe virtually, because thank goodness for all the Wi-Fi and all this, but you might not be able to just hang out like you used to, physically meet up and stuff. And that's okay. That's life, and that's what growth looks like, and we should not be afraid of it or feel guilty about it. Um, if you, of course, if you can keep the relationship and you feel like you're both, yeah, you're going different directions, but you're kind of on the same journey of discovery and you can bond over that, then hey, go for it, because we all have to do it, right? So we had to almost tell tell ourselves, life is life. There are no rules, although society tells you that there are, but really there aren't. And it's beautiful when you accept that.
Yeah, I think too with the part of like, oh, you've changed. I've noticed too, it's a lot of cases, well, personally how I felt is that a lot of those people in my life, they were kind of comfortable in where they were. Not saying they didn't make any growth at all, but kind of just were stuck in a cycle, and I've been through that, but I really worked hard on pushing myself outside of that box of like, okay, I know I'm staying in these situations, these friendships, these things because I'm comfortable, but realizing that I wanted more than that. There was always a deeper thing behind it. And so I really had to push myself to get out of that and realize like I'm going to lose friends. I'm going to, move. I'm going to upset people. I'm going to do all these things. But I know that what I'm doing is because I'm trying to fulfill that purpose that I know that I have, and to be able to provide myself and my future kids and stuff the life that I want to give them. Is just kind of realizing like there are gonna be a lot of people in your life that are like, oh, you've changed, and they're gonna want to pull you back and keep you where you're at because they like where you're at. They don't like who you're becoming because it's different. It's change. A lot of people are scared of change. Oh, you're becoming someone else. Like, why aren't maybe like for me, I had an 8-year friendship that ended. Kind of was a thing of like we're drifting apart and I was comfortable with being by myself and going places, and I had a lot of different dreams and stuff than she did, and she very much was comfortable in where she was at, and I felt like because she could tell that I was drifting out of that and I was becoming someone else, it really didn't work out. And
Mhm.
there are some people that will accept that and that will adapt with you and maybe won't stay inside of that specific comfort zone. But I just kind of realized at that point, like, I'm going to go through this a lot. If I'm going to work towards this really big goal and I'm going to be constantly changing, I'm going to go through this so many more times, so lose so many friendships, upset so many people. But I know that there's a reason behind it. So that's the only thing that like keeps me, from getting in a spiral behind it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, we have to accept that some people are there to be in our lives to teach us something just for a short period of time, and then there are those that stay a little longer, and then those that will be there forever. And the forever ones are not that many, and that's okay. I think there's also that misconception in youth, because like when we're young, we want so much validation by our peers, and we also think that the more peers we have, the more friends we have, the more valuable we are, and it is absolutely not true. And one of the things that I always remind my kids is like, look at mom and their dad, like how many close friends do we have? Because we have a lot of friends, but how many actually, like actual close friends do we have that we talk to? Maybe not on a daily, but often enough to say, oh, they're in our lives. They actually know what's going on in our lives. Um, and it's not that many, and that's okay. And if you start looking at every individual, it's mostly like that, because the really good quality of friends are always going to be, the smaller amount, the smaller group. And that matters a lot, because realistically not everybody's going to be in love and wanting to know your everyday things and be all in your life. um, and I like that, and I think it's also a sign of self-worth, that you're not just going to take anybody as your friend. It's going to be people who actually are worthy of your time. And I say it that way because I think that society still has this negative connotation, or this negative belief, that thinking that others need to be deserving of you is a selfish mentality. But I don't think it is. I think it is a mentality of knowing your self-worth. And so I always tell them, choose carefully who you're going to spend your free time with, because we only have so much time in this earth. You're only going to live so long. We don't know. Everybody has an expiration date, and we don't know what that date is. So spend it with those who actually matter. Even down to like, and some people are probably going to be really ticked off when I say this, but even your wedding, don't be inviting everybody in the mama who is actually in your life that deserves to be part of such an intimate moment, or your graduation, or your baby's birth. Don't be inviting, oh, all my friends, look, that's more like, look at me, look at this. Choose quality, not quantity. And be selfish with your time. Give it only to those that have truly earned to be around you. And you'll see how much happier you'll be. You're going to have more special moments with those people. It's going to be very genuine, like, happiness to celebrate those special moments with them. So hopefully, society is leaning more that way, and then you'll see how much peaceful your life will be too. As I've gotten older, I have been experiencing the "I don't give a crap about what people think" thing. And you hear that a lot when you're younger. And they're like,
Right.
oh, the older you get, you don't give a crap about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how empowering and how freeing it feels. And I'm not fully there yet. But as I'm getting older, I'm feeling it more and more. And I wish so, so badly that we humans could learn that at a very young age. Because if we didn't give a crap about what people think about our failures or our wins, or who we're with or who we're not with, or what we're wearing or not wearing, where you go to school, what you study, oh my gosh, we would be completely unstoppable. So work on that, youth. Work on not giving a crap. Just live for you, not for others.
Right. I feel like, obviously I don't feel like I'm fully there, but I feel like I have worked a lot on that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I cut out friendships and stuff, because it became down to that thing of like realizing I stopped caring, not that I didn't care about the person, but just caring about, like, because I always felt like I was someone who was just always like, I didn't care about my feelings, but I just always was like, this person's upset. It doesn't matter that I'm upset. This person's upset. And always trying to, like, be that person to fix it, or, bend over backwards, because I felt like I had to prove myself in ways. And also to that validation thing of, like, I was scared to be alone. Like, if I don't have any friends, then, like, and when I was first kind of going through, ending that friendship and stuff, like, I remember so many times, like, talking to my mom, like, I don't have any friends, mom. Like, what am I gonna do? I don't have friends. Like, I'm so lonely. And I really come to the point of, like, and I love that I can say this, I really love my own energy, and being by myself, and just having that time. Like, I feel like I've really become solid with myself. I love enjoying spending time. I get home and I put on music, and I feel like so many nights I come home after work and I'm having my own dance party by myself. I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting on music and I'm just in my room all by myself, just dancing and having so much fun. And I feel like if you had asked me this 6 months ago, a year ago, even 2 years ago, I would have said, what am I without friends? I feel like I'm nothing. I was scared to be alone, to have any time. I'd always have to be FaceTiming friends, spend time with friends, hang out with family. Like, I had to be filling that void of so many things. I couldn't just have that time where I'm just like, it's just me and I'm just
Yeah.
here, and I'm just doing me.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't care. You want to be my friend? You don't want to be my friend? It doesn't really matter to me. Like, and it's the thing of, like, if you don't hold those values that I have, if I don't feel like we're in alignment, I'm done. Like, that's just kind of where I've come to. It's like, not that I don't care about people, but I finally care more about me than other people. It was always others over me, and now I'm like, I come first.
Yes, congratulations. That is huge, especially being this young, because there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Just because you're alone doesn't mean that you're lonely. And I feel like if you're feeling lonely, you've got a you've got a lot of work to do, because um, you shouldn't have that codependency on the companionship of anybody. That's uh, yeah, that can be a big problem where you just cannot be by yourself. Enjoying yourself should be beautiful and peaceful and fun. You said you're, dancing alone. I've done that too, and it's like, and you feel silly or whatever at first when you start doing it because you're not used to it. But then suddenly it's just second nature. This is just what you do because you're so happy being in your own skin by yourself, not really caring about having to please anybody. It's very, very liberating. So kudos to you. And I hope that you continue to grow on that because, like I said, I'm 45 and I'm still learning. I'm still not completely, I'm still fearful, but I still do things. I still, self-sabotage. I still have these ideas of perfectionism. I'm still trying to get rid of that. I'm still doubtful, at times. But the key is like, I'm always overcoming it. And it really helps when you do surround yourself with people who cheer you on and help you process. Like your friends are not there to tell you what to do. Your friends are there to hear you out and also to tell you like knock it off, when you're doing something you shouldn't be. That's a good friend. And the other thing too is having a group of friends who are doing amazing things uh, is very helpful because it's that motivation, right? Of like, oh, okay, so you're doing this. Oh, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to do this too. It's like, and then they cheer you on, and then they might be at a higher level than you. So they'll teach you a few things that you could be doing to get up there. And then you might have other friends that are maybe a step behind you. So the key is to please just like help them out too. And it becomes like this really beautiful relationship where all of the people in your circle, you're all moving up together and you're at different levels. And I heard this a long time ago, and they said, because the whole self-sabotage and comparing myself to others, and they were like, why are you comparing your chapter 1 to their chapter 30? And I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. That's so true. Like we just like, oh, but so and so is doing this. And then you don't think, well, they've been at it for so many years. They've been perfecting or, reworking their strategy. And here I am beating myself up, and I'm just at the beginning stages, or maybe I'm at the middle stages, but they still have more experience. So it's all a matter of like, how do we think of ourselves, and how do we think of what's going on in the world? I feel like society's shifting that from going very linear to getting outside of that and expanding. And I love it. It gets me really excited because I see so much growth and so much potential in a lot of people. And it's like, well, for me, I feel like I now finally understand when people say the older you get, the better life gets. And I'm like, oh, I get it. It's because you stop giving a heck about what others think, and you're kind of like more daring, and you also know more, which helps. So, but the learning does not stop. It really doesn't. And then if you're not learning something new every day, then you gotta look for something to learn. You really, I think you really have to be learning something, even if it's something really dumb. Like I just learned the other day that whales have like mammal glands that are tucked in. Yeah, they like tuck them in to hide them. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Like I'm learning something new. Like I learned that, like 50 to 70% of their milk is made up of fat. I'm like, holy cow, that's a lot. It's like, it's just senseless things, but it's kind of cool that I'm still learning new things. And that might be totally useless information, but I'm also learning other things that will, help me in life somehow. So yeah, it's fun. I think that learning also kind of keeps you alive, it's like excited about life.
Yeah, because it's that like, what is the next step? Like, what
Mhm.
is my next thing?
Right. Yeah.
Um, I know we're a bit over the hour mark. Before we end this, I wanted to say one last thing with what we're talking about that I feel like I would have loved to have heard this 2 years ago when I started my journey. And I know that a lot of people, wherever you are, I feel like this is going to be very helpful. I feel like a thing that you really have to understand is that there's never not going to be a point where you're never going to have another thought like that, another limiting belief. There's never not going to be another day. Even if you feel like you've done all this work and you get to the point, there's going to be so many days where you're not feeling that 100%, where you go back to that point and you feel like you're falling backwards. My my biggest advice to that is that it's not exactly the fact of getting to the point of thinking like, "Oh, I have to just get to the point where I never have these thoughts again, like, I'm not allowed to think this." The thing that you really need to work on that I've really worked on is how do I pick myself back up from when I think this faster than I did last time? So, for me, it's like I would have a thought and I would sit in it for a couple weeks, like, I would just get very down, and so if you listen to these people like Mel Robbins, and like one of the biggest people that like I love listening to, she she says the same thing where it's like you're gonna have those thoughts. It's just how can you rewire your brain so that when you have that thought, you know what to do next. Because for me, a lot of times I feel like I get stuck, and I love this word analysis paralysis, where I'm like overthinking something, and so just know that it was okay to have those thoughts. It doesn't mean that you're going backwards. And I'm also saying this to myself too, because sometimes I still think that. I still think, I feel like I've overcome this. Why am I thinking this again? There's a reason why it's coming up again. Maybe there's something that you didn't look at the first time or the second time. Um, it's another lesson, we're always gonna be learning lessons. So I just feel like that was really something that I wanted to share because I feel like it's a thing where, especially with social media, we see these people that we really look up to, and we're like, it seems like they've overcome this. Like, how come they're doing so great? And how come I'm still having all these issues and I feel like I've done all this work. They still have those thoughts. They may not say that they still have those thoughts. I mean, if you really listen to people like Mel Robbins, though I love people like that because they're very honest. But the issue is with social media, there is a lot of people that won't share that with you because they share just the good parts. So this is where I'm at now. This is all these things. And it's really of like, you're a human being. Those people are human beings. You're still gonna have those thoughts no matter what. It's just realizing, okay, how can I do better for the rest of the day or for tomorrow? And realizing it's okay. Like just give yourself grace. Doesn't mean say, oh, I'm just gonna accept defeat. Trust me, I've been there. But just realizing, okay, like something I'm working on is I'm writing out, okay, what have I done this week that I feel like I could do better next week, and just work on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with all of that.
Thank you. I just felt like that's something to share because I feel like it is something that when you're getting to the journey, it's like you really think like, oh, am I gonna ever overcome these things? And it's like you never really do. It's just you realize I know how to get myself out of that. I know I'm gonna end up at some point getting back into this thought, but now I know I have these tools that I know, okay, when I get into that state, how do I get out of it?
Hmm. Yeah. I heard somebody say, if you're going through something really, really difficult where you feel like you can't see the light through the darkness, think about the fact that you have overcome everything that happened to you prior to right now. And I've been through a lot of really difficult things. So when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. I've overcome all of this stuff. And a lot of times it was simply because you just have to keep moving forward. Some people are like, oh my God, you're so strong. I'm like, nah, I just had to go. I had no other choice, you know? so, um, so if that helps anybody, I hope that they, take that and find some kind of courage or some willpower to keep moving forward, because um, life can be really hard, but life can also be very, very beautiful and rewarding.
I agree. I feel like when you get in those moments, it's really of like, why me? Why is this happening? But when then you reflect on it, it's like obviously it's like, oh, I don't wish this on anything or anybody, but I realized like it happened for a reason. I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't go through those lessons, if I didn't go through that trauma. And just realizing like this is shaping you into who you're meant to be. And then when you share that story, you're able to share that power and show other people that they can also overcome whatever they're going through.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad that you're holding this space to have these type of conversations, because people could use listening to what we just discussed today. And and I'm also here in case anybody needs any type of education on bullying awareness and prevention, especially adults that are advocating for their children or for themselves, even because I've helped people with how to manage their situations at work, because that happens too. So yeah, but thank you so much for giving me the space to share all these thoughts. And I hope that you continue. I hope that we are celebrating like your 100th podcast here soon,
Well,
2025.
I can't stop, especially because I've got a waiting list, and that's with being booked out until April. So
Ooh,
that's something that's kept me going. I'm like, I have all these people, like, I felt like I know we're about to wrap up. I'm sorry. I'm keeping you long, but I am genuinely loving chatting with you. So I really appreciate the little bit of
yes.
extra time. But yeah, when I started, I was so scared, and I just was like I said, I earlier on, like no one's gonna watch, no one's gonna want to be on, and it's just like, oh, that was the other thing I want to add too. Yeah, it's just like when you were talking about your whole story and feeling you still have these things, I really thought like I really connect with that, and also thinking of like how you just do things anyways. You're scared of failure, all these things. And so is a lot of people, and I have those things very feel fear of failure is also like one of my number one things that I'm just like, it's not just really other people, it's the biggest one is myself. I'm scared of failing myself and not holding true to what I see being my future. And we all have those things, and you too, and you did it anyways. And I did it anyways. I was scared to start a podcast. I did it anyways. I said, I'm scared. I acknowledge that I think I'm going to fail. I'm accepting that I have those thoughts, but I'm doing it anyways.
Yeah, yep. And you should
That's what I mean
celebrate that.
of like, I always say, my little thing I like to say in my saying, take those thoughts and throw it out the window. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, those are limiting beliefs. Those are things trying to keep you in your comfort zone, trying to hold you where you are because you're scared of all those things. And a lot of people are scared of, well, what if I get famous or something? How do I deal with that? What if my business grows? How do I deal with all this influx of stuff? But people do it anyways. You just have to accept that I know I'm going to be scared. I know it's going to be a lot. For me, I was like, how do you even start a podcast? I don't even know the first thing to do that. And I did it anyways.
Hmm.
And and now I have all these people lined up, and I didn't think that it would go anywhere, but I just was like, I'm passionate about it. That's another thing. If you're passionate, it's going to happen. It may not be now, it may be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's going to work out for you though. If you're passionate about what you're doing, it's going to work out.
Yeah, absolutely. And congratulations to you. You should be so proud of yourself.
Thank you. The perfectionist side is not. It's like, oh, you could have done better, or you said this, or But I try to like just stay in the moment, and I'm like, I really have come a long way. I've done all these things, and I feel like most people would have been like, I'm giving up, and I've given up. But it's always that thing of when you know you have a why, you can't give up. You're
Mhm.
like, in this moment, I want to, but every time I would give up for a couple weeks, I'd always come back because I always saw that this is where I want to be.
Yeah,
But
because deep down, you know that you can do it. You're just exhausted from the challenge. Like that's part of the reason why I stopped editing my own videos and gave it to my VA, because I was like, oh my gosh, I said it again. Dang it. I'm like, oh, I stalled too much. I paused too much. Oh my God, what did I do with my eyes on that one? Like I was like, oh no. this is not good. I need to just hand this over to somebody who is going to just have a different view of it, and let her edit it because she's one of the listeners. So if I do it to myself, I'm gonna be nitpicky, and it's never gonna get done. Yeah.
One little thing before we wrap this up, if you guys ever look at my past episodes, one thing I realized, this streaming service I use, it shows me waiting for the intro to play for a split second, and I've showed my mom a couple where I'm making such a weird face, and I didn't know that you could see me because I thought the intro played automatically, but it has a split second where you can just see me, and if you just pause right when it starts, and I still leave the videos up, even though I'm like, I was making such a weird face while I was waiting for the intro to play, and you can see it in the video, but you just gotta let it be. You gotta say,
Yeah.
this is just part of my story. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. And you know what? People like me love seeing that, the rawness of it. So don't worry about it. You're fine, girl. You're fine.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you coming on and spending that extra time. Yeah, I always love ones like that because I try to stay to that hour mark. But when you really just feel connected with someone, you really just want to talk. It's like sometimes I'm like, if the person doesn't mind, I don't mind going over because
Mhm.
we get to, that last 20 minutes we just had, I feel like was really great. Had a lot of good tips.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you, Samantha. You're doing really well. I like the conversations we're having, and like the stuff that you're sharing. I know that you're gonna definitely impact a lot of people who are going through a similar experience. And again, like I want to be celebrating with you when you hit your 100th podcast. So make sure to let me know so we can celebrate together.
Yes, I would love that. And I have too so many people that I'm like, we need to do a follow-up episode in like 6 months or something because I feel like so much can happen within that time that there's so many people like you where I kind of am interested to know like what is Dolly's life in 6 months from now? Like I would love to know.
Yeah.
So
Hey, I'll let you know. Hopefully, I'll be in Georgia, living my best life.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
definitely stay up to date with me and if we ever wanted to schedule it out, or just do anything. I love
Mhm.
coffee and chats. So I
Yeah.
would love to stay connected.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Samantha.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on tonight. And for anyone who may want to reach out to you, if you could just let us know where the best places to find you would be.
Yeah, so Instagram, I share a lot of great tips. My handle is Dali Talks, and that's DAIT as in Tom, ALKS as in Sierra. And you can also go to dalitalks.com and get some more great tips. And you can also find the Dali Talks podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts, including YouTube. Thank you, Sam. I
Of
mean,
course.
Samantha. Here, look, I'm already shortening your name.
No, I prefer Skip, so that's fine.
Okay.
So I'll have that linked. And then as for where you guys can find this podcast, I said that you can pretty much find it on everything that is true. But just to throw it out there in case you're wondering, we're on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music/Audible, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Deezer, Podbean, Buzzsprout, Castbox. I mean, there's so many of them.
Mhm.
But I really wanted to put this out on so many different platforms for anyone who may want to listen to it and kind of listen to the conversations that we have and get to learn some tips. So I really hope you guys enjoyed tonight's episode. You can find me, Samantha Bailey on Facebook or Sam B Daily Motivation on Instagram and TikTok, but best place to message me is on Messenger. And we hope you guys have a good Thursday night. And I will see you guys tomorrow with the third episode this week with Michelle Coy. I think I'm saying that right. So I'll see you guys tomorrow night, and I hope you have a good Thursday night.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.